On this week's episode of The Geek State, the Game of Thrones continues as one show is canceled and another is picked up.
Jack-o'-lanterns are so last week. However, Green Lantern apparently in. Fetch.
Benioff and Weiss are not making a Star Wars, and we look at what that movie would have been about, plus other projects that never saw the light of day. All that and more on this episode of The Geek State.
Aha! This is a ploy. No. It's a ruse. No. It's an ambush. No. A subterfuge. No. A confining device. A snare. A box popped up with a stick. It's a trap. It's a wrap. Where's my hat? It's a trap. Sorry. Just finally figured it out. On my way back to the office. Couldn't get it out of my head. Gotta go. I'm double parked.
Hey!
Stand by alert.
This is it.
This episode features exclusive new content from George Lucas fans. This is The Geek State.
Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of The Geek State podcast. We're covering the world of geek every week, bringing it to you, all the stuff going on, whether it's movies, video games, comics, or just the cool stuff on the internet we find, and we, want to bring it to everybody listening. Welcome aboard. My name is Chris, and joining me as always, my buddy James. James, I'm hoping we had a really good weekend, and we're just like a little over a week until The Mandalorian, so I'm hoping you're doing good. You're ready?
I'm very ready for Mandalorian. I'm ready to record this podcast. I've been antsy all week. I'm riding high off of a Mississippi State win finally this week. We had a four-game losing streak, so we had to make sure that we got one this week. But next week we have to play Alabama, so that's always fun. Hopefully this show, I can ride the excitement of this show all the way into the work week this week.
I think so too. Exactly. I mean, that's, we released the show at the beginning of the week to, kind of get you going and get you excited. We've got cool stuff on the way. I mean, so much Star Wars stuff's going on. We've got, the Mandalorian thing. I just literally got back in from a barbecue festival where in the state of Texas, they brought together the top 30 barbecue joints in the whole state to one place. Paid a lot to get in, but got to test and taste, and there was good stuff. There was stuff that I literally spit out, which I never thought that I would encounter some barbecue that I thought was so incredibly bad that I would, spit it out. But yeah, I don't know what I don't want to, obviously, and what's funny is, okay, so this booth had a really long line. So just whether it's just kind of herd mentality, where we were like, well, we've never heard of them. Let's get in this line. And it was an interesting, the banner said Texas barbecue, but it was not a Texas that I'm aware of.
It's new Texas barbecue.
It was something else. I will say, I think it was from Houston, and that's all I'll say. Well, no shade to Houston. being originally from Dallas, there's a little rivalry there, but it's good. And, I'm full. I'm happy. We're looking at a week until Disney Plus launches. And then just a few days after that, we get, Jedi Fallen Order.
Yep.
I'm planning my Wookiee hooky. I need a doctor's note, maybe, because now that I just said that on the internet, I don't think anybody from work listens to this, but that's fine.
Also, they're your paid time off. You can take them whenever, right?
That's true.
It's not, they can't say no because you want to do it to play a game. It's your PTO, right? Come on,
right? And I've got a couple of days, and can totally do that.
Just don't get sick later. That's the only rule.
Right. Rolling into flu season. I think that's a good strategy to take a sick day before I might actually need one. So maybe I need to reevaluate that. But we hadn't talked yet about the Mandalorian trailer. There's, but the thing is awesome. I think it looks great. I am starting to get kind of nervous only because I feel like I still don't know really much about it, which to me is okay. Which to you, I think is more okay than I am. Like I kind of want to go into this having a better feeling, about it. I trust the people behind it, obviously, but I think I'm just getting like that lead up, the jitters or something.
Yeah. Are you nervous? You're nervous it's not going to be what you want it to be, or not going to scratch the itch you want it to scratch?
I think it's not more about me. I honestly think I'm going to really enjoy it. Right. because it's Star Wars. What I think I'm most worried about is just the fact that it's the first Star Wars live action TV show out of the gate. And it things going forward will depend on how well this does.
Right.
The good thing is there's nothing else launching with Disney Plus, with the exception of like Lady and the Tramp and High School Musical and some of these other stuff. It's kind of unopposed when it comes to the brand new content wise. So we know the eyeballs are going to be on it. It's just whether or not it resonates. And I think it's going to. I know it is. I'm getting a little nervous. And the trailer, honestly, if I'm being honest, didn't give me anything more than the last trailer for The Mandalorian. But I know it's intentional. I know that's what they're doing. That's just, they're not showing us much more.
Yeah, there's a couple shots that you get an extra half second, but other than that, it's pretty much the same.
We get Bill Burr.
We get a little bit extra Bill Burr.
So that was cool. The funniest thing I saw on the internet about that, though, which was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard, was it was a picture of Bill Burr and the caption was, "Oh my God, dash Rendar, exclamation mark, exclamation mark."
No.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And then someone in the comments posted a picture of the Shadows of the Empire dash Rendar action figure that had a gun mounted like on his shoulder.
Ah, I see.
And I was like, okay.
But it had hair, so
and
technically
clearly
Dash Rendar doesn't exist in this universe, right? Isn't Shadows of the Empire Legacy?
Correct.
Legends or whatever they call it?
I would say Dash Rendar is still Legends. I'm sure Alex from like Star Wars Explained could shed some light, but I think I think that the Outrider is canon. Because we do see it
in other things.
Because we saw it in the special edition of New Hope.
You're right.
If that is indeed the Outrider, I don't know if that's been retconned just to be like, this is the, whatever ship.
Right. Yeah. It's just the TC 783 or whatever.
Whatever it is. Yeah. That's one I don't know. The Millennium Falcon clone that they had to have for that game.
Right.
What else is, the other thing that's cool right now, you got Ewan McGregor out there promoting Dr. Sleep, and he's in his interview, he's talking about this beard that he's growing out. It's sort of, he's like, they're testing it. He's like growing it out to see, like, it's kind of his pre-Obi-Wan beard.
And then see if it's as scraggly as Alec Guinness's.
Yeah, they're kind of, they're kind of doing like, I bet wardrobe tests are going on right now, and they're doing some screen stuff, just getting ready, because that thing's going to go in front of cameras in June, I believe. And it's cool seeing him out there because, they're bringing up the Obi-Wan show, and he's like, yeah, I've had to lie about this for 4 years.
Right.
That this was originally going to be a movie, and now it's going to be a 6-episode series. And so every time people would ask him, he had to say, I would do it if they would just call me, he's like, meanwhile, I'm up at the ranch.
Yep. Yeah. They're looking at flight rosters and they're like, you've definitely been there, sir. You've been to San Francisco 6 times in the last year.
Yeah. And it's crazy to kind of think like we almost, if Disney Plus wasn't a thing, would we have even gotten an Obi-Wan series? Would they have just, when they kind of saw how the standalone live action stuff with Solo did financially, I think the movie's phenomenal.
Yeah.
How the money wise, it didn't go well. Would they have just canceled it and tried again? And that's something we're going to go into a little bit later. It's all of the Star Wars projects that either made it to a certain point and never got released, or in some cases there's 39 episodes sitting in the vault at Lucasfilm, stuff that we never got, and even something called Star Wars Episode 7 Shadows of the Sith. And we have logos and we've got quotes. That's all coming up a little bit later, but let's get into the news. All right, this week's been kind of an interesting one for Game of Thrones and Benioff and Weiss and that whole thing in HBO and Warner, all this stuff. We've had a cancellation one day. HBO said they're after filming a full pilot, they are not going to pick up the untitled Game of Thrones spinoff It was, I think they were the code name or what was being floated online. They were calling it The Long Night. It was starring Naomi Watts. And it is something we're probably never going to see. It's one of those filmed pilots. If it ever does get onto the internet, I'd like to watch that and talk about it. But that got canceled. But meanwhile, the very next day, HBO confirmed they have picked up a full season of House of the Dragon, which is going to explore the Targaryen dynasty, and it's going to be set 300 years before the events of Game of Thrones. It will receive an initial 10-episode run at HBO, and George R.R. Martin has said once he is finished with, I guess, Winds of Winter, that's
whatever the next book is, or the book he's working
whatever
on.
The final...
Yeah.
The one he's been working on, like he started working on that thing when Game of Thrones premiered.
Jeez.
And he's still not finished with it. So he said once that's done, he will write, for the show. So, which I guess is pretty cool. I think there's like a history book called like Fire and Blood, I think. And I think this show uses that book as its kind of formation, at least the history aspect of it, the major points and stuff. Basically HBO just wanted a show with dragons. Mm-hmm. And now they got it, and they don't want Naomi Watts anymore. The
Long Night wouldn't have dragons. Well, I guess it could because dragons existed, but no one would be riding them unless there were. I don't know, because that one was supposed to be about like the first, like the creation of the White Walkers, right? Wasn't that what that was supposed to be like?
Yeah, the first men and the children of the forest. And I was reading there was a lot of issues with diversity in the way that they cast the show, and they put all the people of color as the children of the forest, which is mostly prosthetics and makeup and paint. And it didn't seem promising from everything that I had heard from its production, that it had gone over budget. And it didn't sound all that exciting. Dragons definitely do that, and crazy people. The Targaryens aren't known to be the calm and I guess peaceful. No. They're terrifying.
They had the Mad King, So you gotta
That kind of stuff runs in the family. You can't get rid of that. So that's an interesting thing. We'll get more information about that. HBO is of course part of the Warner family of everything. So they've been on kind of a spree of new television shows and launching, and then HBO Max, which is coming soon, James, and you've got we got some superhero stuff coming our way.
Yay, superheroes. I know we've all been waiting for news about this particular superhero to come back.
Hey.
I'm just kidding. We love him.
Not after the last one, for sure.
Yeah, I know. So obviously everybody's super excited about Disney Plus. So Warner Media needed to get their little press conference in for HBO Max, which they did do, and they announced a few things. One of those things being they announced that the head producer of the CW DC universe is going to produce a Green Lantern show for HBO Max. The Green Lantern now is very mysterious, said Berlanti.
Yeah, that's it.
In what promises to be our biggest DC show ever made, we will be going to space with a Green Lantern television series, but I can't reveal any more about that just yet. So no information.
Basically none.
Yeah, I wonder if it's really going to focus around Green Lantern or just specifically like the Lantern Corps, being that it is going to take place in space from what it sounds like.
I would think it needs to. Yeah. It could be a really interesting, like, procedural type of thing if it was based on Earth, and it was, we don't know which Green Lantern it's going to be. It could be Jon Stewart, or it could be, what's the
new one?
Whatever or the one that Ryan Reynolds played.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Basically, it's forgettable. Basically,
I've never seen that movie, so I have no clue. Hal Jordan, is that a thing?
That's it. Yeah. Hal Jordan.
Wow. Okay.
We are clearly super fans of the Green Lantern.
I looked at my wall of comics and I saw a comic book of Green Lantern, and it just hit me. It doesn't say Hal on it, but for some reason that came to mind.
That's how our brains work. It's a weird thing. We were sitting around one day at work and they were listing off random stuff and they're like, how do you know that? And then my response was like, I'm the exact same way with Star Wars aliens.
Right.
You know, like I have no business knowing like every person in the cantina, and I don't know everybody, but show me their action figure. I can tell them their name. I got the feeling from HBO Max, this announcement, because it's so far away from launching. HBO Max is going to launch in May of 2020. That some of these things were just sort of like, guys, what do we got? Like, what's in our stable? You know, like, oh, we haven't done Green Lantern yet. Oh, we should do that. Berlanti, are you on this? And he's like, sure, why not? I'm also doing like a Superman and Lois show. Why not one more to add to the roster? That's why I don't think there's anything there yet.
Yeah. And they also, I mean, this whole kind of thing about this was like a little strange. They were, not only were they doing it with DC, but they also have like a Gremlins show that's going to be made for it, or a movie of Gremlins, one of the two. I don't know. Yeah.
And a Grease spinoff.
Yeah. Very exciting.
Rydell High. Everyone's lining up for that one. That's you got Star Wars and Marvel and all your favorites at Disney, and Warner's like, dude, what do we got? We got Batman. No, we can't do Batman for some reason, because that would be awesome. What else we got?
Yeah, Looney Tunes.
Yeah, sold. Yep. You know, the thing is, it's going to be, we're going to get HBO as part of this. Here's some details. It's a little weird just because of who owns this. AT&T is the, I don't know if AT&T is the parent company or if it's Warner Media. I feel like AT&T is the parent company of this whole thing. It's going to cost, if you are just totally, you have no, AT&T phone, or there's all kinds of things that complicate the deal. But if you are wanting to buy this thing, it's going to be $14.99. You're going to get all of the HBO stuff. You're going to get the back catalog. I think, what are they saying? Like, this is going to be the home of Friends.
Yeah, they did buy the rights to Friends and South Park as well.
Yes. They spent $500 million on South Park.
That's like made up money. Like how do you get, like, I assume they own, like, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, like, now own stock in that. Something. There's no way they just wrote a check for $500 million.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be some sort of, other,
I mean,
like,
obviously
space
it was a deal
money.
with like Viacom, who owns
correct
Comedy Central, but obviously that money did trickle down to Matt Stone and Trey Parker in one way or another. But which is so fun because it's literally just the two of them doing most of the voices, and they do it in like 6 days. Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Like, it's amazing. Yeah. So I often think when you hear these numbers, like, oh, we spent $700 million on Friends, I'm like, wow, like, what would $700 million, like, how could you use that money for good? Like, what's, as opposed to just, you now have the streaming rights to this, to this TV show. Now you can, in fact, get HBO Max. If you are currently a subscriber to HBO Now, which is the one that you get when you pay and not have it through your cable provider, basically that just becomes HBO Max, because you're already paying $14.99 for HBO Now. Right. So now you're getting all the extra stuff. If you are let's see, I'm trying to remember. So don't quote me on this. Don't walk into your AT&T store in May like you'd remember this. But you're supposed to be able to, if you have a certain unlimited plan on your mobile phone. That sounded like antiquated. Okay, boomer. Like, if you've got like unlimited plus or something like that, you'll also be able to get HBO Max, I think for a year. So depending on how that works, I'm thinking that what's going to happen is as we get closer to this and they gauge how excited or how kind of, not excited people are, they're going to want to boost that subscriber number. And one of the ways they'll do it is be like, oh, do you have DirecTV? You got HBO Max. You got AT&T wireless. You got HBO Max. Like, all of a sudden, like, now you have millions of subscribers on paper
for shareholder meetings.
So, yeah. What do you think? What do you think about this? And like the DC, they already own a streaming service with all these superhero stuff. DC universe. So what do you think this means for them? And just pure speculation, of course, but
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is odd that these two things would coexist if they continue to do that. But I mean, obviously DC and HBO are two separate entities under the same umbrella.
Sure.
So they each have to file their own balance sheet. So obviously it would be in the individual company's best interest to maintain their own streaming service. However, I'm sure that there will be something will happen there, because I may be wrong on this, but I don't know a single person who subscribes to DC Universe or the DC streaming.
I don't either.
I've heard the shows on there are pretty good. I don't know the name of it, but the one with Brendan Fraser and
Doom Squad
yeah. I have heard that's very good. I've heard there's one other show on there that I heard was good. Titans. Yes, the Titans show. But
which is a Netflix exclusive if you're outside of the United States.
Oh, is it really? That's interesting.
Yeah. We stumbled across that when we were overseas back in March. I was like, oh, I can download Titans to my iPad.
Well, there you go. Get around that system.
Didn't watch it.
One thing that you did mention.
Just travel out of the country.
One thing you did mention, which spurred another thought about this whole like cord cutting and cable thing, is that PlayStation did announce this week as well that PlayStation Vue is going away starting in January. So,
which is, I was a subscriber for a while until I ended up with the AT&T kind of, it's like a no brainer. I had to switch because it was so much cheaper. But I thought that PlayStation Vue still, in my experience with the DirecTV Now thing, was still a better user experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a current subscriber. I've had it for couple years, 3 years now, something like that. And I love it.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't had it for that long. I've had it for like a year and a half. But I love it. And I'm a little bit bummed that it's going away. It was a little bit more expensive than some of the other options, but it had everything that I wanted, which was lovely. But now I'm back shopping. So hit me in the DMs with your cord cutting suggestions.
I've been doing the same thing because they keep raising the price of my AT&T, the TV, whatever they're calling it now, AT&T TV Now, whatever. They keep.
I'm leaning towards YouTube TV. I'm getting a lot of love coming through for YouTube TV, and obviously that parent company has plenty of money to keep that running for a while.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And then into other news before we get into our main subject here. Basically, it's just a release date, but I'm super pumped. The final episode of Vader Immortal will hit Oculus Quest and Rift platforms November 21st. The only details we know about it is it will result in a duel with Darth Vader himself. And I only hope that the first time I face down Vader, I get my ass kicked. Because if not, what does that say?
Yeah, right. Well, I thought you played as Vader the whole time. So I've obviously never played this, but I thought that was the whole bit.
No. Yeah. Oh, no. And it's if you can get around to playing it, it's incredibly immersive and really fun. But you're playing as a smuggler who gets kind of pulled into this thing on Mustafar. Vader is trying to capture this ancient relic that's underneath Mustafar that has something to do with bringing people back from the dead, basically, like in a quest to get Padme back is my assumption. And you are force sensitive, but you don't know it when you start the game, and you unwittingly help Vader a little bit, and then you have to try to defeat him. Like you realize the bad stuff that's going on, and they, the Mustafarians are like, dude, you did what? Basically. Right. So you have to kind of make things right. And the third episode will be the final episode of the Vader Immortal series. And ILM X Lab is talking about basically saying like it's gone really well for them. And they're talking about what's going to come next onto that platform. So that makes me very excited.
Take out the official scanning.
This is a feature presentation.
And now, on with the show.
So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Actually, it was like last week. Benioff and Weiss, these are the guys that did Game of Thrones. They've had a rough week, James. Not only did they have this interview in Austin, Texas, where they basically said, yeah, when we got the job to do Game of Thrones, like we had no idea what we were doing. Like we had never worked with the costume departments, and we had never, like, this whole thing for them was like a giant film school for them. And I forget which one, because to me they're both kind of interchangeable. Like one of them, the thing they did before this was they wrote X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Well,
so
if I would have known that, I would have never even given Game of Thrones a chance.
And see, and I loved Game of Thrones, and I am still someone who enjoyed the last season. I did feel like it was incredibly rushed, and I think that's where my only issues are with it. And so you can spare me DMs or comments about it. It's whatever. It's just my opinion on it. But they were given basically three Star Wars movies. Of course, that announcement was made prior to the final the season finale of Game of Thrones. And so the rumors had been going around about like, well, what's this movie going to be about? And, you know, we talked about it, you know, that, oh, it's going to be Knights of the Old Republic. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. Well, that's no longer happening. There are all kinds of different takes on this. I've heard from people, including Variety, that they said that this the split basically was kind of it was them leaving. That they started to have discussions around Lucasfilm, and they could tell that what they wanted to do didn't really quite mesh with what Lucasfilm wanted. And so Lucasfilm let them go pursue other options, essentially. So that's when they got that $250 million deal with Netflix. And once that, I think all the paperwork got signed for that, Lucasfilm was like, yeah, they're not making Star Wars anymore. And Variety reported that this would have been about the founding of the Jedi, which, you know, Dark Horse did some comics a long time ago that was sort of like the origins of the Jedi Knights.
Those are just legends now, Chris. That's not
correct.
What
those
really happened.
It is not what really happened. There's a lot of stuff that didn't happen, James, and I'm glad you said that, because we're going to talk about some of the projects and things that it's basically the Star Wars we never got. That there's a time, you know, a long time ago, following Revenge of the Sith, when we didn't think we were going to get any more Star Wars, and so Lucasfilm started working on a bunch of stuff. LucasArts did some stuff, but the first one we're going to talk about, and I'm going to read a quote from George Lucas himself. I think this interview happened after Episode 7. I'm not sure it happened after Episode 8, but he was basically asked what his Star Wars films would have been. Now, I want to preface this by saying, James, that there are a lot of things that he, alongside his concept artists and stuff, did prior to the Lucasfilm's sale that clearly ended up in what we saw on screen. Kira became Rey. Luke is in exile. All that stuff is George Lucas. So anybody blaming that on JJ and Disney is blaming the wrong person. That was George. That was all stuff there. So, but then this is what we get from George saying what his episodes 7, 8, and 9 would have been. And I'm not going to do my George Lucas voice because it's not very good. He says, the next 3 Star Wars films, we're going to get into a microbiotic world, but there is this world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the Wills, and the Wills are the ones that actually control the universe. They feed off the Force. And if I'd held on to the company, I could have done it, and then it would have been done. Of course, a lot of fans would have hated it, just as they did Phantom Menace and everything, but at least the whole story from beginning to end would have been told.
Cool.
Your take.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, the Wills part makes sense, but I don't know how you, I guess, personify those Wills and make them characters or a factor in a movie, other than just learning that they exist and learning that they're actually what controls the Force in some sort of what's the elf, the Liv Tyler from Lord of the Rings when she's like surrounded in white and, you know, the all-knowing or, you know, that type of thing.
Right.
Or the alien from the abyss is what I'm
Oh, yes. The pseudopod.
So, I mean, you can't really say much about it. It obviously didn't happen.
Never happened.
Exactly. I don't.
I just had this vision of like it's Han and Rey, but in this version it's Kira, and they're on the Millennium Falcon, and they find Luke, and Luke's like we the Wills man, and they shrink the Millennium Falcon down, and it's like that 1970s movie Inner Space where they like travel through Luke,
or that 2009 movie Ant-Man or 2000 and whatever.
Ant-Man.
But, yeah, I mean,
we didn't get it. It's not a thing.
We didn't get it, and yeah, I don't know. It could have been,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it could have been bad. Could have been good. Who knows?
Dodged a bullet. But here's something else that's really cool. Now, this is, you know, if you're really steeped in the knowledge of what's going, you know, all this kind of stuff, like you're going to be like, this is old news, Chris. I know that. I stumbled across this, found it interesting because it was new to me. And it's an interview from CineLinks magazine. CineLinks, not magazine. Sorry. It's a website. And it's Jordan Mason does this, and I follow him on Twitter, and he mentioned it in a tweet that he had interviewed Hayden Blackman, and we know Hayden from The Force Unleashed. He was the guy behind The Force Unleashed and Force Unleashed 2, but he left LucasArts right before that game came out. But you know, he was all involved with that as well. There are some interesting things. It's in a book that was published about LucasArts called Rogue Leaders, the Story of LucasArts. It came out in 2008. So we're still a ways away from the sale of Lucasfilm. And James, can you pull up? Do you have that picture of the page with all of the LucasArts logos? Read a few of the ones that stand out to you on there.
Well, I mean, Jedi Knight 3, Brink of Darkness stands out. We have a few that are character specific, being Star Wars Darth Maul, which we've seen alpha footage of in the past, where they did get a little bit into that one, but it never happened. Followed by Star Wars Han Solo with what looks like an Imperial logo.
I think that's the Falcon.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It is the Falcon. I see. It's a little blurry for those listening. And then Star Wars Vader, which we did kind of get a Star Wars Vader being Force Unleashed. it's like True. Star Wars Vader light. But I think the one that you are most interested in, and I think that the one that caught both of us most off guard, would be Star Wars Episode 7: Shadows of the Sith.
Yes, that's the one that jumped out at me. What's interesting reading this interview, which is great, and we'll post this over on social media just so you can read the whole thing for yourself. But this was basically what we're seeing is a bunch of logos and treatments, and they had written, you know, plot summaries for these games and concept art and stuff. And then we're testing it. You know, we're market testing some of these things, and some of them, some of the names are similar, just with the words kind of changed around. There was like, I'm trying to find one that's, Star Wars Rebel Jedi. And then there was one called Star Wars Jedi Rebel. Mm-hmm. So they were testing, you know, like there's just A/B testing. Like, do you like this one more? Or do you like this one more? But the only one that doesn't kind of follow that same look, it's Star Wars Episode 7, Shadows of the Sith. And so Jordan asked about that. Like, what was this going to be? And this isn't, before I read the quote, this isn't, what's in this article, but in the mindset of this time period, which is 2004 is what it looks like I'm reading here. So this is before Episode 3 is out in theaters, because if I'm thinking correctly, that was 2005. I just got my Star Wars nerd card removed if I got that one wrong, but let's go with that. George was kind of in a place, right, where he was like, I'm done. I'm walking. This is Star Wars Episode 3 is the last movie. That's it. Mm-hmm. We're 6 films. That's it. So it sounds like LucasArts was moving forward, with, kind of seeing what we could do. Could we do an Episode 7, make it a video game? I'm sure it'd be cinematic with cutscenes and voice actors and all that stuff. But this is what Hayden Blackman said Episode 7, Shadows of the Sith would be about. It says, Shadows of the Sith would have put you in the role of an adult Ben Skywalker, who was walking the line between the light and the dark side of the Force, unleashing new Force powers never before seen in games or movies as he investigated a new threat to the galaxy, a Solo. And kind of is episode 7. It's just not Ben Skywalker. We got a dark side Solo. But the line that stood out to me the most, of course, was the unleashing Force powers never before seen in games or movies. That is where I think we ended up with the Force Unleashed. Like, I think all of these things, all that development and stuff was like, okay, well, we're not doing that. Because later he says, eventually I ended up pulling those elements from several of these pitches to craft the pitch for the Force Unleashed as, as kind of, that was kind of the results of all this stuff. But I find it interesting that we could have possibly have just gotten a video game version of episode 7.
And I don't know the timeline of this either, but this plot to this game sounds a lot like the Legacy of the Force books. Which was,
I think it's about the same time.
Yeah. So, which was Ben Solo and Jason Solo. Or I'm sorry, Ben Skywalker and Jason Solo. Like Jaycen or something stupid like that. But
yeah. It's a Star Wars name. It can't be spelled right unless it's Luke or Ben.
Yeah, right. But everybody else Jason becomes bad. Ben Skywalker is good. I didn't read the whole thing, but it's quite good. My brother enjoyed it. So.
It's faking in space. It didn't actually happen. It's legends. Jaina killed him. Anyways, spoiler alert. So we didn't get in episode 7. And then the next thing that happened, now this next period of Star Wars is, I feel like, James, we were, ramping up to do I think this is like right before we started doing the old show. We started hearing about 1313. There was going to be a Star Wars live action TV show. I think the TV show precedes it. But the word on the street, George and Rick McCallum was the producer of the prequels. They were working on making a live action Star Wars show. And there's even promotional stuff from Toy Fair with a 2009 date. Now that didn't happen, obviously. The rumors and reports are that there's 50 scripts that were written for this, including those written by like Ronald D. Moore, who did Battlestar Galactica. He's the guy in charge of For All Mankind, which is on the Apple TV Plus service that just got released. And then that kind of went away. And then I think a lot of those core concepts went over into 1313. And James, I feel like, what was your take on 1313? Because I feel like we were pretty pumped for this game.
Yeah, 1313 looked awesome. Essentially, it looked like an Uncharted, but took place in space in Star Wars. And it became even more exciting after it got, or I guess disappointing, but after it got canceled, it was announced that all the test footage that we saw was the character that was being played as was not the character that it was going to be. But at the end, they were going to do a model swap and you were going to be playing as Boba Fett. So that was the disappointing part.
It was like, oh, we could have had this. Like, sure, like Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which was, it was fun for what it was. Like I played it on the GameCube.
Right.
That was Jango Fett. This was Boba, in Coruscant. And was kind of borrowing probably a lot of concept art and, models and things that were kind of being worked on for Underworld. One thing that kind of bummed me out of something we could have gotten. So Underworld would have taken place on Coruscant and also taken place kind of in those lower levels of Coruscant. And Ronald D. Moore's got a quote that basically saying that Vader would have shown up for a 2-episode, probably mid-season, finale type of a thing, where they go on break. Basically, like the criminal underworld on Coruscant gets out of hand and Vader himself goes down and is like, enough of this crap, and just kicks everybody's butt to kind of restore balance in the underworld. Like I kind of think like, what would 2009, what would that look? Like, what is that? It's not going to happen. We're not going to see that.
Well, it would be on, it was supposed to be on like regular TV, right? Is that correct?
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever had a distributor plan. I think it was George was a big fan of doing things his own and then saying, look, I've got 20 episodes of this TV show. Yeah. Who wants it?
So I would assume we wouldn't get Darth Vader from the end of Rogue One. we would get
Probably not.
A little bit more muted version of that.
Likely, yeah. Or maybe not. You know, the thing is, back then, they weren't working with the mindset of we've got more Star Wars coming, like where it was like, we can do what we want, you know, like there weren't, I don't feel like they were too worried. Like, that's why I think, like The Force Unleashed was treated like canon.
Yeah. Well, I was more referencing just the absurd violence of the situation, the brutality of Darth Vader.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Not him showing up and killing people, but more so him showing up and just like slamming someone to the ceiling while he steals people's guns and then shoots them or like kills them with his lightsaber. You know, it's like, I don't think it would be quite that intense.
Yeah. So we never got. It's so interesting because what I saw at Celebration, I watched somebody play a level of 1313, like live on stage. Was playing this level where they were jumping onto a ship that was like crashing and falling through the levels. And, you know, again, the protagonist was this, you know, random person. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, God, how far in development was this thing before it got completely shelved? Which kind of leads me to our last Star Wars we didn't get. And I have a feeling that at some point, unfortunately or fortunately, we're going to end up getting these because they're sitting on a shelf when they could be making somebody money. At Star Wars Celebration in 2012, I sat in an auditorium where Seth Green, and I got a high five from Donald Faison as he ran down the aisle to announce Star Wars Detours, which is a comedy series that took place between episode 3 and 4, but it's like loosely, I guess, because the characters are weird and Obi-Wan does some stand-up comedy. James had never heard of this until right before we showed, right before the podcast started. So I sent him over the trailer. So I'd like to hear kind of, James, what you thought of watching this, not knowing this existed.
Yeah. Well, once you sent me the trailer, I do remember us actually talking about this, I feel like. But I like Seth Green. I like my favorite episodes of Robot Chicken are the Star Wars Robot Chickens. I agree. Looks like that, but it's CG and it takes away the comedy of it to me. Like it's like too cartoony, they are different characters in this. Like it's not the same funny things happening to Darth Vader. It is Darth Vader trying to be funny.
Right. The Death Star is a mall. Yeah. You know, that's their cover story. And the lady's like, wait a minute. This is no mall. This is more like a Death Star. You know, really reaching for the comedy gold.
And I'm sure it would have been good. Don't get me wrong. But the trailer that they released, I was just kind of like, whoa, okay. This is the thing.
Yeah. There's 39 in September. Seth Green said they have 39 episodes that are complete, with 62 additional scripts finished. Now, obviously they're not going to do anything with those 62 scripts, but if you've got 39 episodes sitting on a shelf in a streaming service about to launch, next week, and you want to throw out some Star Wars content, all you got left is The Last Jedi, because that's a Netflix thing right now. Solo is also only on Netflix, so we have to wait for those contracts to expire. Then you've got the holiday special. You've got the Gindi Clone Wars, which should totally be on Disney Plus. I can't believe that's not going to be on Disney Plus, at least right now. And then you got the Ewok movies, and then you got Detours. So I feel like we're gonna get it. It's just, I think it's going to be something that kind of just gets dropped on Disney Plus, and it's just sort of there. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, there's that thing that we had never seen. Okay, well,
right when Mandalorian ends and subscriptions start to drop.
Right.
Until they start releasing the Clone Wars on it.
Right. In February. Yeah. We'll get it dropped around January or so. Yeah. Looking through all these things and kind of reading more about it. And there's all kinds of other video games that got close. But it kind of made me think, like, what other Star Wars things did we almost get close to? I know this is not a definitive list, but if you've got something cool that we almost got, please, head over to Twitter and share those with me. Because I'd like to read into those as well.
Let's look around the region
and take our pick of the week.
Shut up and take my money.
All right. So every week we take an opportunity to share with everybody the stuff that we've been up to, and especially the stuff that, we really like, the things that we think you might also like. James, there's nothing in the show notes for you, and I was going to offer it to you first. So unless you're,
I'll take something. I'll give something a free plug. Even they never pay me, and I support this.
You're not getting paid?
No, not yet. Are you? Do we need to?
Oh, well, I mean, Disney buys all my movie tickets. That's how that all works.
I don't go see very many Disney movies. Actually, I take that back. They're pretty much the only movies I see. But anywho, so my pick of the week is I guess my pick of the week technically is a game called The Outer Worlds, which is a RPG that takes place in space. It is made by the people Obsidian, who are the developers of Fallout New Vegas. It is a Fallout game that takes place in space. Essentially, you are making decisions that change, the way things work, the way people perceive you. You kind of build your character, and you can build him to be have a silver tongue, if you will, and not have very good combat things, and pretty much talk your way out of most fights. Is an option of a character build. You can build a character who is very, very dumb and just runs in with a two-handed weapon and smashes things. Really, the world is your oyster, and it placates to all play styles. So it's just something that I do recommend. And on top of that, the other plug that I would do is if you do have a gaming PC, I fully support the Xbox Game Pass for $1. If you haven't signed up for it before, for $1 you can sign up for a month and play hundreds of games, or I don't know if it's hundreds, but 100+ games that they have available to you. So like all the Halos, all the Gears of War, all the Forzas, all the anything that's Microsoft first party, and then a ton of indie games. There's a lot of fun indie games on there, including one called Minute, which is a black and white Zelda game, top-down Zelda game. It resets every minute. So you run out and you get a sword, and then it resets, and then you have the sword. So then you can go do something else for a minute, and then it resets, and you're trying to kind of navigate this world. And everything you do, if you accomplish something, it stays accomplished. However, it does reset every minute, and it is quite fun. So
that sounds cool. Yep. Well, Game Pass for $1. How do you not do that?
Right. Well, I guess there's a lot of people that aren't, which is why they're offering it for $1.
It's a good point. Mine, I basically walked out of the theater for my next one thinking this is the thing I want to share and recommend highly on the podcast. I'm a pretty big fan of the Shining movie. Stayed at the Stanley Hotel, did not get attacked or haunted by any ghosts. And recently, just the last couple of days ago, I was Jack Torrance for Halloween. So I went and saw an early release of Dr. Sleep, which is, of course, the Mike Flanagan film, which is the sequel to The Shining. It's based on the book by Stephen King, but it is also a based off of the Kubrick film, because the books that Stephen King wrote for The Shining is not what we saw in the movie The Shining. So there was some merging of things that Mike did that was freaking incredible. If you've seen Netflix's Haunting of Hill House, Mike Flanagan did that, and he brought so much of what he did in that series, just kind of the pacing and the creepiness of it. And there's, it's kind of a slow build. I don't think that you need to have seen The Shining to enjoy this movie, but if you haven't seen The Shining, definitely watch it, because it's going to help your enjoyment of it, because we're following Danny Torrance, played by Ewan McGregor, after his experience. It actually picks up like shortly after the events of The Shining. We get young Danny Torrance and Wendy, and the actress that plays her is very Shelley Duvall. Like it plays very well in the Kubrick kind of, universe. It's kind of, there's moments in the movie where she does stuff or makes, or says things a certain way where you're like, whoa, like that's dead on. We've got another girl that has The Shining. You've got some bad people. I don't want to go into much more, but the ending is the way it builds upon each other, and there's a lot more stuff that happens, because I think some people's criticism of The Shining is like it's 2 hours where nothing happens, and then there's all the stuff that happens is right at the end of the movie, and it's sort of just like, what? This has a lot more traditional modern filmmaking stuff where there's some good pacing. There's some great sequences. There are moments that are incredibly hard to watch. It's spooky. It's scary. It's intense. It's incredibly well done. I think if you liked the first It that came out like last year or the year before, this, in my opinion, is a much better Stephen King movie. I think it outdoes it. So
very cool.
Take that, it's awesome. Like, I have been talking about it probably nonstop at work since I saw it last Wednesday. It comes out this Friday. So if you haven't seen it at the early release that Fandango did, you have plenty of time. Watch the movie, watch the original Shining one more time. And if you don't have time for that, you've watched it before, you just want to, there's tons of really good recaps on the internet you can watch to get you ready for Dr. Sleep. It is fantastic. It's so good. I want to talk more about it, but it all would spoil stuff, and that's where I'm going to leave it right there. Also, that's about wraps it up here for the podcast. We hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that you will join us online on our social media to interact with us, talk with us, tell us what you think. If there's stuff that we should check out, if you have a kind of your own pick of the week, we want to hear about it. So jump over to Instagram. We're at the Geek State Podcast. On Twitter, we're the Geek State Pod. And on Facebook, we're just facebook.com/the Geek State. So join us on all those places. Talk to us. You are a part of this community of ours, and we want to hear more from you. So from all of us here at the Geek State, that's just me and James pretty much, and you at home, in the car, wherever you are. Stay excellent to each other, and we'll see you next time.
Yo, dudes, the Empire's pretty chill. Maybe you could, join it or something.
No, I left a message with your roommate, but your machine was full, so your landlord hung up on me when I was walking your dog because my homework ate it. Detours!
On this week's episode of the Geek State, the Game of Thrones continues as one show is canceled and another is picked up.
Oh my God. I tried to speak and I couldn't. Can we try again?
Yeah, go, man.
Jack-o'-lanterns are so last week. However, Green Lantern is apparently in. Fetch.
Benioff and Weiss.
Oh, sorry. I should have written it.